Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a dumb neighbor stole my classic car and calls the police on me when I take it back. She falsely claims that me owning the car is illegal because I am too young to own it. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one starts like this. After finishing the academic season with decent exam results, a long summer and a good college was just around the corner. This was only topped by the big party I was planning for my birthday next week. The days leading up to the party flew by and it was here before I knew it. My parents, being the socialites that they are, could not stop themselves from going overboard, inviting every family member, friend and neighbor to an already crowded household. My dad then brought his tuned 1964 Shelby Daytona supercar out from the garage. Which was weird because he was usually quite protective of it. To my surprise, he had decided to pass it down to me as a birthday and graduation present, giving me a great incentive to start my driving lessons as well. And yeah, Ripe stars, by the way, that seems like a great first car for a new driver. Anyway, I was over the moon and my friends were jealous as hell. Many people swarmed around to get a good look at the car, but their interest dropped when the pizza delivery arrived. Returning to the yard after eating, I noticed the door was open and I thought I saw someone sitting inside and I assumed it was my dad until I spotted him in the kitchen. Going back outside, I found it was our neighbor Karen, who was oblivious to my approach until I gave a not-so-subtle cuff. Karen had not been invited to the party, which she knew as well, but still presumed to make herself at home even in my new car. Karen jumped and then turned to glare at me like I had purposefully snuck up to scare her. I thought to quickly change the subject by mentioning how nice the car was, which she agreed as she rubbed her sweaty palms across the dashboard. As more people began to exit the house, she took her cue to leave. I locked the car soon after. While I was helping to tidy up the party mess, my parents told me that they wanted to take a week to go see my aunt a few states over, asking me to stay and watch the house. I obliged, having no reason to give up a week of my summer when it could be spent with the house to myself. I was tinkering with the car on the next morning as they packed their bags, eager to get familiar with my new vehicle. Some time passed by before a voice interrupted me. I closed the hood expecting my mom, but instead I found Karen facing me. To my surprise, I must have been too focused to notice my parents leaving earlier. Before I could speak up, Karen turned her attention to the car, running her hand along it as she talked. It turns out that she was the person who sold the car to my dad, though it was quite obvious she still felt quite attached to it. When I proudly exclaimed that my dad had given it to me as a birthday present, she snapped back at me, swearing that she was still the rightful owner because it was not done properly or whatever that meant. The conversation hung on awkwardly after that until she excused herself and I went back into the house. I was starting to wonder whether a week alone was such a good idea after all. And well, my mom called me later to tell me that they got to the place safely and I told them about Karen's visit and they were not pleased. My dad explained that she was forced to sell some items to pay off a court order, though he warned me not to mention it as she could get very annoyed about it. I played off my worries so they did not need to end their trip early and steeled myself to a few more days. I pulled myself out of bed after not much sleep as some hoodlum had been driving fast around the block late into last night. I pulled apart the curtains as I yawned, interrupted by the sight of my empty driveway. As I panicked outside, I suddenly caught it from the corner of my eye. My Shelby Daytona on Karen's driveway. Getting closer, I saw tread marks from the road leading up to the car, and inside the keys still in the ignition. The realization hit me hard. Karen was the hoodlum cruising around last night in my damn car. I saw the door open as I jumped into the seat and took the car home, followed closely by the thief. Karen started in outrage, but when she noticed my own emotions boiling over, she changed to a softer tone of petty excuses. She said that I had left the keys inside, so she moved it to keep it safe. I scoffed loudly and asked if she took it for a spin, knowing her interest in the car since my birthday. She denied it immediately, though averted her gaze after. I went inside, ignoring her pleas. I did not trust her one bit, and my suspicions were quickly confirmed by my doorcam footage. I hated the idea that she stole it, but at least I now had proof. 2 blissfully quiet days passed by before I saw her again, only by chance as I was grabbing a snack from the fridge. As if the woman had not learned her lesson from last time, she was opening the car door, head swiveling suspiciously like a comically obvious criminal. I ran outside to stop her, catching her just before she fell onto the seat. Karen darted to her feet and scurried back to the curb before turning to confront me. This time her mood was dark. While I was the only one who had a right to be angry about the situation, it was not hard for her to twist it until she was the victim, claiming that I'd been intimidating and harassing a harmless, nice old lady like her. I asked her again about her joyride, which she denied again without apology, though she did seem to sour a bit after I told her about the video footage I had. She demanded that I hand over the tapes because I was illegally recording her, though it only pointed to my own driveway. When I refused, she threatened to call the cops, and I let her, as I did not feel like I had anything to worry about. After Karen called the cops, she refused to let me leave her side in case I made a run for it, apparently. I was seriously starting to doubt her sanity or mental capacity by this point, and I could see why I was warned from getting into it with her. Half an hour of a menacing staring contest later, help arrived in the form of 2 uniformed officers who pulled up nearby. Without so much as a hello, Karen launched herself at the 2 men, listing everything that had happened today, while I sat patiently. Karen claimed that I had stolen her car and then threatened her when she tried to take it back, which I protested, but all it achieved was a shouting match no one could understand. In a moment to catch my breath, Karen scoffed at me because of my age, saying that I was too young to own a car, which they initially seemed to believe. Leading one of the officers to my house, I showed them my ID, birth certificate and driver's license. Without the noisy one present, I was able to calmly explain and apologize to the issue. I was also able to show them the camera footage of the theft in action, which they seemed to be quite resolved about. Back outside, the officers compared notes as Karen glared at me smugly. The cops decided to dismiss the issue as I could prove ownership, which she was furious about. Before they turned to leave, I told them I want to press charges over the issue and happy for us both to go to the precinct to answer their questions. Karen's fury turned to me after that, calling me a slimy little crap and shouting in my face. When one of the officers tried to intervene, she lashed out wildly and smashed a wing mirror of the car before attempting to just storm off. The cops grabbed her before she reached her driveway. She was hauled into the back of the police car, kicking and screaming like a mountain lion, though she could do little else to resist them, and into the car she went. Eventually, Karen has pled innocence until the footage was brought up, at which point she admitted everything. All in all, Karen ended up going to jail for this, which I feel is very much deserved. I also got a restraining order against her, so she can never mess with my car again. And yeah, ripe stars, I sure hope so that Karen never messes with OP's car again, because that is a seriously expensive classic car. And by the way, if you're also a connoisseur of classic cars, please let me know in the comments what kind of classic car is your favorite. Also, while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Either way, the next one is titled Ridiculously Entitled Guest. Again, 20+ years ago, we had a night where we were overbooked and knew that we had to walk about 12 rooms to another property. This was not typical, but we had a contract come in later for 30 rooms for a 2-week stint, government prepaid, these guests were well behaved, and we were not gonna tell them no because one night we would be oversold. When we were oversold, we noted which guests were only staying for a single night, so we didn't have to worry about moving them back to our hotel the next night. And by the way guys, I forgot to mention, this story is from r/Tales from the Front Desk, which usually has stories about entitled hotel guests which are very entertaining. Either way, there were about 25 of these single night guests checking in, because this was such an egregious oversell. The VP reserved rooms at the super high-end, historic and famous hotel down the road. This way, as these guests came to check in, we could at first just make the offer to them and hopefully we would get all the volunteers rather than have to force people out. Per our company policy too back then, we paid for it in full. So basically, these guests would get a free night, and despite the offer of a free night at a nicer hotel, for which we would provide transportation too, it got to the point that the last 5 we would have to send to the other hotel regardless. Some of the check-ins I understood wanting to stay with us, such as ones that had kids they would rather not see running around a hotel like that. But others just didn't care if they spent the money. The ones that did take the offer jumped on it and were quite happy. Of the last 5, 3 of the guests arrived together and shrugged it off and took the shuttle over. They seemed middling about it, but they got off our airport shuttle, so I think they were more tired than anything else. Then the fourth to arrive, he was a doozy, dressed in a tailored three-piece suit, metal luggage, visually presented to impress. We explained that we were out of rooms for the night, but that since his reservation was guaranteed, we would be footing the bill to move him to the high-end famous hotel down the road. Now, this hotel down the road is not part of a chain, it has been independent its entirety, over 100 years old now, 700 plus rooms, private golf course, hosts head of state type events. It's very posh, very, if you have money you know, type of place. Mr. Three-piece suit, I'm not gonna be shoved into some no-name hotel. Me, sir, this is a very exclusive hotel and much nicer than Mr. Three-piece suit interrupting me. I only stay at internationally recognized brands, not one-off no-name hotels that no one has heard of. Me, 3 out of the last 4 sitting presidents have stayed here. Mr. Three-piece suit, did you not hear me? I only stay at the best of the best. At this point, the night manager is walking up to the front, introduces himself and asks if there's a problem. Mr. Three-piece suit says he is staying here and will not be sent off to a no-name hotel. Night manager looks at me and I shrug. Night manager, sir, the X-Hotel is a world-class facility. Mr. Three-piece suit interrupts him again very loudly and turning red. Night manager takes no crap but politely smiles and tells him fine, he will put him in an internationally recognized brand and walks him over to guest services so our driver can take him across the highway to an internationally recognized brand that has a good reputation but is definitely a step down from us. And then the last guest to come in, a local couple who was having grandma babysit so they could have a night free, were absolutely giddy about getting to stay or free at the historic hotel down the road. But Mr. Three-piece suit? Who knows? My guess is he was trying to look the part of a rich executive, but did not have enough information to play the part. If you're wondering which internationally recognized brand he stayed in, it was Motel 6, one of the infamous, or famous, however you take it, budget hotel chains in the United States. I hope he enjoyed his luxurious stay. And the next one is titled, Don't Park in Disabled Spots. I have a disabled parking placard and a few weeks ago I went to Target to buy things I did not need and forget the things I did. Not only were all the spaces taken, someone parked their gigantic Escalade on the line between 2 disabled spaces, taking up both. Wholly irritated because this happens so much, I walked around the car, no placard or disabled plate, cue the fury of a someone who has to deal with this stuff all the time, and cue my petty revenge. So I took a picture and went inside to find a manager. When I found one, I showed her the photo and she rolled her eyes and sighed. Apparently this happens a lot at their location because it's near an affluent town with a lot of very wealthy, very entitled people, and most often it's the owners of huge SUVs and F-150s that park like jerks. She said she would call the cops, so I decided to go back outside and hang out by the doors to watch the show. The manager joined me and we chatted while we waited for the police. The cops arrived and walked around the car, peering through the windows and running the plate. One cop took a little book out and started writing in it. They took some photos and one came over and asked if they would make an announcement in the store to get the driver outside. The manager radioed someone inside and asked them to announce the make and model and plate of the car over the PA system. A few minutes later, she came charging out of the store, middle-aged, well-dressed woman, the common Karen of North America, and already yelling at the police, of course. As soon as she got to her car, one of the cops held up his hand to shut her up and started lecturing her. I was too far away to hear, but she stopped yelling at least. That cop spoke to her for a few minutes and then the other cop with the little book handed her but 2 papers. She looked absolutely apoplectic. The cops came back over and spoke to the manager, telling her they ordered her to move her car and if she didn't or caused problems in the store to call them back and they would tow the car. They told us they gave her 2 tickets for each space at $500 each. Ouch! The manager thanked the police and me and went back inside. The woman stomped around a bit before getting in her car and peeling out. The cops looked at each other, then got in their cars and followed her. Pretty sure she continued to have the day she deserved. Meanwhile, I happily treated myself to some Legos for performing a public service. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My coworker, 55 male, has a sweater that he wears every day at work and leaves in the office overnight. He never takes it home to wash, and over the last month it has developed a distinct smell. At first I tried to make innocuous comments to him, "Do you smell something musty?" etc., but he didn't catch on, so last week I said to him, "Hey, that sweater is starting to give a stench. Could you take it home and wash it?" He replied, "Nah, that's not my sweater," and walked away, which effectively ended the conversation. After he left one night, I went to his desk and smelled the sweater and confirmed that nasty stank, and it was so putrid up close. I have no idea how he lives like this, so I took the sweater on my way out and threw it in a dumpster out back. The next day he was looking around for it and asking everyone if they had seen it. I just shrugged and said, "No, have not seen it today," which was technically not a lie. I feel kind of bad, but I cannot live like that. We work in a 7-person office with no HR, and our boss is not effective at dealing with issues, so I felt like this was my only option. Am I the a-hole? Clarification: when he said, "That's not my sweater," he was referring to the stink not being his sweater. The sweater was in fact his. He is a bit of an oddball, but I cannot even imagine that he would wear a random stinky sweater that he did not own. And here, ripe stars, would you have done something similar if you were in OP's shoes? Either way, let me know whether you think OP is the a-hole here or not. Comment number 1, everyone sucks here. Throwing stuff out that's not yours is crappy, even if your boss is ineffective, and this is something you should have attempted to bring to them. But I also don't know why this guy is wearing a stinky sweater that doesn't belong to him, and then is mad when an item that doesn't belong to him is missing. Comment number 2, you're the a-hole, you cannot steal someone's property, period. It may have felt satisfying in the moment, but that's an actual crime. If he finds out it was you and this goes before HR, they are absolutely not gonna accept "I thought it smelled bad" as an excuse. Also, everyone is hung up on the guy saying the sweater was not his, but I think he was saying that the sweater was not causing the stench, not that the sweater did not belong to him. Edit: I see a lot of people suggesting that I had other options, and the ideas being brought up are frankly asinine. Just spray some freeze and call it a day. Have you ever sprayed Febreze in a bathroom where someone took a dump? Then you know it just combines with the crap smell and almost gives it a sort of power up. Next, tell HR about it. Well, some people have trouble reading, it seems. I already said it's a small office with no HR, and our boss is incapable or unwilling to address situations like this. I did in fact bring it up to him, and he said to find a compromise, such as allowing him to wear the sweater 3 days a week. Not a problem solver, this guy. As for the idea of take it home and wash it for him, I don't think this one even warrants a response. I suppose I should ask the rest of the office if they have any laundry for me to take home, so I can do it all at once. Edit number 2, I see many people bringing up the legality of this and the police being called or this going to court. May I remind everyone that we are talking about a sweater? I would love to hear how that 911 call goes. "Officer, I need to report a missing sweater. Please send your forensics team out ASAP and track this lunatic down before the sweater thief strikes again. Or God forbid, I get taken to sweater court. I hope the Honorable Judge Cardigan takes pity on me and offers a reduced sentence if I do people's laundry while in prison. Get real, people." Seriously, we are talking about office squabbles, not Grand Theft Sweater, aka GTS. Update. Hey all, before the update I just wanted to apologize for getting so defensive in my original post. I've been feeling really stressed about the situation, and I think my guilt expressed itself as anger. Even though I still don't agree with the alternative actions people offered, I should have been more chill about it. So then the update, we have a Monday morning meeting every week. And I had planned to pull my coworker aside at lunch to tell him what happened and explain why I felt it was necessary. At yesterday's meeting, my coworker took the opportunity during other business to bring up his sweater. He said that he felt disrespected, and as multiple people have complained to him about the smell, he has not been able to narrow down his suspect, so he needs a full confession or he'll be taking further measures. I thought about confessing, but to be honest, his eyes had a crazy look and it made me feel unsafe, so I kept my mouth shut. When no one said anything, he stormed out of the office. My boss predictably did nothing. A couple hours later, he returned with a guy who said he was his cousin and a police officer, though he was in normal clothes and had no badge or ID. He said his cousin was gonna be interrogating people individually all day. At this point, my boss finally stepped in and said that was not happening and brought my coworker into his office. I don't know what happened in there, but it got loud towards the end and I did not see him for the rest of the afternoon. I found out the next day that he was fired. Not exactly the outcome I wanted, but it does solve my problem. And the next one is titled Decade-Long Revenge. A little setup. My dad is one of 9 children to my grandparents. When the oldest sister, my auntie, let's call her Margaret, got married, one of the gifts she received was 4 very poorly made clay pots from one of her friends who was not super close to the family. They were all very different to each other and did not match at all. I assume they came out of a first-timers pottery class or something. Anyway, fast forward 15 years and my parents are getting married. Margaret shows up at the wedding, as does everyone else. The ceremony and reception pass with no drama and everyone goes home. The following week, my parents begin to sort through all their wedding gifts. Unwrap Margaret's to find a very old worn-looking cardboard box with the old tape still underneath the new tape put on there by Margaret to hold the lid closed. Dad opens the box to see the 4 pots that had been given to Margaret 15 years prior. My parents knew this was a gift to Margaret originally, because at the bottom of the box was a cord of congratulations on your wedding addressed to Margaret. She had not even bothered to take the pots out of the box when she was gifted them or check the condition when rewrapping them. This thoroughly pissed off my dad. Then his anger turned to determination as he started to develop a plan that would stretch almost a decade. With Christmas fast approaching, my dad rewrapped the pots in the same box with the same wedding card addressed to Margaret. Essentially in the same condition he had received it in, and he then wrote another card addressed to another one of his siblings explaining his plan. He gave the present to the youngest of his siblings. The newer card explained that she was to hold on to the pots until next Christmas, making sure to unwrap it and make sure that everyone could see the pots in one way or another. The card then explained to leave the wedding card in the box and to not let anyone see it. My auntie would then hold on to the box, pots and card until next Christmas. She would then give them and my dad's note to the next sibling above her in age, my uncle. This cycle would repeat another 8 times until it reached the oldest sibling, Margaret. In my dad's letter, it instructed the last sibling before Margaret to not give her the letter written by him regarding the plan. 9 years after giving the gift away, my dad and all his siblings watched as she pulled out the pots that she had been seeing being passed around from sister to sister for the last decade. She then noticed the note still in the box. She opened it and a category 4.2 earthquake was registered as her jaw hit the floor. Now, most people would expect her to erupt in rage, but Australians have some of the best senses of humor on the planet. The family all had a good chuckle about it and moved on to Christmas lunch. The pots are now separated, one going to my dad, Margaret, my grandparents, and the last being the trophy of the annual cricket game. It was sadly destroyed by a rogue ball in that very same yearly tournament and is now only half a trophy. And yeah guys, I mean, it is one thing to not like a present and not use it or whatever. Even getting a refund for it if possible is okay in my book. However, giving it away as another present for next Christmas or whatever is just outrageous. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.